Hey guys, welcome back to another Warframe video and continuing my series with lore behind the frames. Specifically, this is part 2 of Titania and Oberon. Originally, I just wanted to make one video and try to lump everything together so I don't have to repeat myself twice, right? However, the lore, the backstory alone as to just what is a Fae and where is their kingdom and so on, it took a whole video in itself, and I left out a lot of important data. But I try to give you just the summary as quick as possible. So in this one, I'm not really gonna talk about lore so much. I'm just gonna make the comparisons and explain how Oberon and Titania are comparing to all this. So Oberon and Titania, are they actual creatures of lore and mythology? Sadly, I'm gonna say no. See, they are pop culture, and you may be like, no, they're written down in history. Yes, it is Victorian pop culture. I'm sorry to disappoint you. Most people don't know that. I didn't know that once upon a time myself. A fairy king and queen were talked about in lore in the past. That is true. What were the names, if any? I don't know. Perhaps they're out there, but I personally don't know them. Were they Titania? Absolutely not. That was a name that Shakespeare gave the queen because he didn't know a name. And I know he didn't know a name because he got a lot of things wrong about Fae. However, it's kind of irrelevant because since we don't know a name of a fairy queen and perhaps king, then you could put that name upon them just to call them something if you want. So if you want to call the queen of the Fae Titania, go ahead, right? That you're giving it a name, fine, whatever. There was a queen supposedly, we just don't know the name. So you want to call it Titania, whatever. I have no problem with that. But the version that Shakespeare put of Oberon and Titania is absolutely wrong to lore. Like, he did no research as to what the Fae were actually like at all to portray them that way. I assume that Digital Extremes, they really didn't know that Titania and Oberon were Shakespearean and it wasn't actually in lore. They probably thought it wasn't lore, right? Most people think that because you don't really go digging as deep as some crazy people like myself do. That being said, they seemingly, perhaps accidentally, made Oberon and Titania more like the way it's supposed to be in lore rather than the way they were portrayed in Shakespeare, which I find very amusing because it's like, is this an accident? Is this just a coincidence, or did they do this on purpose? I don't know. So I'll explain this in a moment as I go over the moves, but first let's cover Oberon. So his passive rejuvenates living creatures' health, right? This is matching lore, but again, pop lore. I'm sorry, but it's not really real to the way that the ancient ways, the ancient lore, the ancient myths were, like I explained in my first video, but it is in the Victorian age when they tried to theorize what the Fae were like. One of the ways that they were like were the earth spirits. This is fitting that magical essence, that portrayal of the nature spirits. So I would say yes, this is correct to lore, but not the lore of all the way in the past, the original myths. This is more like Victorian interpretation of what the Fae could have been, which I explained in my first video. The hallowed ground, absolutely. Like, you may be thinking this is more religious and Christian-like or whatever. No, hallowed ground doesn't just mean Christianity. There was sacred lands in all cultures long before time, and the Fae absolutely have sacred territories, which I explained in my first video. So these two moves work. Smite and Reckoning is, yeah, it's a good balance to have for the Fae because, you know, like I said in my first video, they are wrathful and powerful. They have all kinds of magical abilities and stuff like that. So yeah, they could have had the rejuvenating from the other thing, but yeah, they will also curse you, hex you, jinx you, or just fucking smite you. It is possible. So these moves are good to have. It does make sense. Oberon's renewal move, like I said, it could have been possible, but that's not really what Fae are about. But to Victorian pop culture, yes, this is matching perfectly with the earth spirits, right? The image that they made the Fae become, well, at least some people, which is the modern image people think of today when it comes to Fae, like I explained in my first video again. In particularly, there was a Victorian painting, and in that painting it was Titania and Oberon, Fairy King and Fairy Queen, and there's flowers and nature growing in place, like these plants don't belong in this area, and they definitely shouldn't be blooming in this season, kind of thing. This is kind of what's being implied in this picture, but again, it is Victorian pop culture because that's not the way it originally used to be, but that's the way they made it become, and that's why in Warframe they are like this, and in a lot of modern pop cultures it is like this as well. As for Titania's move list, her passive is similar to Oberon. You do get healing, just like, you know, that picture implies, like you're able to control earth and you're getting health from it, it's rejuvenating you. Okay, fine, that's the Victorian Age's interpretation, one of their interpretations of what the Fae might have been like. I already explained that. But also the ability to like bullet jump higher and, you know, rolling, stuff like that. That makes it seem more like all types of little Fae, like running around and jumping and flying, like sprites and pixies and stuff like that, which is, like I said, when the Victorian era, when they started to think of them more like boxing them all in and categorizing them as these small little agile creatures that can hide really quick and stuff like that. While the older lore, they're more broad. There's a lot of different Fae, and like I was trying to say, one thing I had left out is they're more ghost-like than pixie-like, if that makes sense, which I didn't explain in my first video. So Spellbind, she kind of like jinxes you, and you like have unfortunate luck, which you like drop your weapon and shit, and then it can increase your luck because now you're immune to status effects and stuff like this. Is completely within lore to both affect luck of someone positively or negatively. Tribute is even more to lore, like they did better with Titania than they did with Oberon, honestly. But tribute is like the old-fashioned way of doing things. Even some cultures still do this today, is you pay tribute to a deity or to a Fae, and then you can possibly get something in return. So move tribute, you are targeting something, and then that's it, they're fucked, right? That's your sacrifice, is them, and then you're able to get this buff, this enchantment from the Fae because of it. And depending on what you tribute, it depends on what you're gonna be blessed with. So this is actually a really good move. So Lantern, what actually is this move about? This is really good for lore, perhaps not Fae lore, but it is still lore filled. So in the olden days, you know what a jack-o'-lantern is. Everybody thinks they know what a jack, but why is a jack-o'-lantern? So how it is supposed to be is a jack-o'-lantern is not just a pumpkin. First of all, it's any kind of vegetable. You carve out the insides and then you leave a candle outside, and that actually shows spirits the way home. It shows them the light in the darkness. That is the point of a jack-o'-lantern. It's not supposed to scare away goblins or whatever. It's supposed to draw in your ancestors so they know the way home when they died, instead of being lost outside and stuff like that. Especially when the veil is thinnest, you know, like All Hallows Eve, Dia de la Muerte and stuff like that. Times like this, when the veil is thinnest, you can get your ancestors, or if somebody just died, you could do that. So I suppose, but that is what it is. It is a lantern, a beacon in the darkness that's gonna attract spirits. Why is this lantern attracting people? I don't know, but it's a Fae, so Fae could do tricky and mischievous and magical bewitchments, I guess you might call it, so that you are the bug drawn into the freaking bug zapper or whatever. It's wrathful, it is magical, it is completely within the realm of possibility for a Fae to do, and it's pretty hilarious, to be honest. Razor Wing is probably what people think of as the most fairy-like move, and I want to say yes, but not for the reason people are thinking, because you probably think that before I made this video, most people probably thought that fairy were just pixies, but they're not. But this move makes them seem like pixies, so you may be thinking it's more correct, but that's not the reason why it's more correct. A lot of Fae were able to manipulate their size. Some could turn from little dwarf-like creatures to giants. That they can manipulate their size like that, or they can be human size and turn little to, you know, be sneaky. That's what it was about. But the reason why I think this is very Fae-like is because, like I said in my first video, the female fairy were super aggressive. They are super domineering. They are warriors and they are fierce as shit. So this is a good contrast to Oberon. Oberon seems more like a healer. He's more passive, he's more mellow, he's more calm. And this move makes Titania, a female Fae, seem like a badass warrior. Like, she's crazy, she's hyper, she's all over the place kicking ass. This is very Fae-like. Both these elements, that Oberon is passive like I said in my first video, and Titania is super aggressive in this stage. This is the most Fae thing that I've seen for a long time. Like, lots of people, they just take inspiration from the Victorian age and they're like, okay, this is Fae, this is Fae. No, that's their pop version of Fae. It's a misinterpretation. It's their ideas of it. The original Fae is more like this move right here, keeping more true to the original way it's supposed to be. Unlike Shakespeare's play, where it kind of seemed like Oberon was more masculine, as we call it today, masculine, and he's the one domineering and in control, and he has to get his way, and his woman has to bow down to him or suffer, you know, ill fate. Really, is disgusting what happened in that story, from my opinion. And then Titania in the story is just passive. She's like, okay, I forgive you, blah blah blah, it's over. What? This is not the way that the lore was supposed to be. First of all, Oberon wouldn't have been a dick like this in real lore. The male Fae wouldn't be like this, not by the overall senses of how they're supposed to behave. And a female fairy being passive like this and forgiving a really horrible thing like this happening to you, being forced against your will to fall in love and be seduced by an animal, which was the original intentions of Oberon in the story, she would not have forgiven this. Hell would have had no fucking fury. Okay, this is what a real female Fae would have been like. And that's why Warframe grasped this concept better, even if it was by accident, than Shakespeare did. Let's move on to equipment real quick. Okay, so let's start with Oberon. Here's a few helmets that are like deer themed, ram themed, stuff like this. And some people, I know for a fact, are gonna jump to the conclusion this is satanic, because this is the image that you see as the devil, blah blah blah. No. Okay, no. Stay in your lane. I don't mean to be a dick. Stay in your lane. Like, this is not the devil. Baphomet is not the devil, okay? Pan is not the devil. The devil is the devil. That's it. Like, Christianity went around, like I said in my first video, everything got demonized. Multiple things from other cultures were called the devil, or were called evil. However, if people were to think for a second, it doesn't even match Christianity, any version of Christianity's own version of what the devil is. Like, you can't just go around saying everything's the devil and then it's not even matching your own interpretation of what the devil is. It's illogical. Okay? Satyrs, Fawn, Pan, Baphomet, they're not anything like Satan at all. Okay? And I actually even misspoke right there by like modern day's biases. Again, I don't mean to be defensive, but I'm just trying to say, like, you shouldn't speak unless you are sure you know, because do you know the difference between a shaitan, a devil, a demon, a daemon, a jinn, and Lucifer? Do you know what the difference is here? They're not all the same thing. So just to note this someplace, so people come across it, and you know, people don't constantly keep telling me this over and over, but Lucifer, the fallen angel, supposedly, right? if that's the version you're going with, is not, it doesn't have a goat head, it doesn't have a ram head, it doesn't have hooves, it doesn't have bat wings, it doesn't have scales. It's supposed to be the most beautiful angel in the heavens if you're going by that version. It also could have been a djinn if you're going by the older text. So it is not anything in comparison with Baphomet. Not by the way that they are, not by the things that they do, not by the way that they look. Anyway, moving on. As for his, what is it called? Fey Arch skin, it's very well done. It's very nice looking. But it kind of is irrelevant if you want to make Oberon an elf, a pixie, an int, or an int-like creature, or a satyr, or a Baphomet. It really is irrelevant because they didn't say what kind of Fey he is, right? Just that he is the king of the Fey. As for Titania's gear, I forgot to mention her weapons, but let's go through them really quick. So Daiwada, that is actually like a fairy itself. It's a earth spirit, lives in the forest and stuff like that. Same stuff like pixies, fairies, all similar stuff, just different cultures. Dex Pixia, you know, Dex is pretty much Warframe for dual guns, dual swords. Pixia is obviously a play on pixie. You know what pixies are. As for her Mab helmet, that's more Shakespeare stuff. That's a fairy queen. It's supposed to enchant. You have your greatest desires in your dreams and stuff like that. More Shakespeare, not actual, you know, historical accounts or mythological accounts. At least not that I'm aware of. As for her Oro helmet, that's Nymphs of Breeze. Remember that in my first video I said that some people were classifying fairy as air elementals. As for her Danan's helmet, that is a race of magical beings, Fey-like as well. They live in an alternate dimension, Fey-like as well. They're just all fairies. They're all, like Oberon's helmets are all about like pretty much goats and deer helmets and stuff like that. Titania's helmets seem to be all Fey-like, all fairy-like. I guess that's it for now, guys. I was rapid firing information here, so I probably missed a bunch of stuff. But I think that's it for now. So thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.